Indian Oil Corp buys U.S. crude amid pressure over Russian imports. Imagine a scenario where a major player in the global oil market is forced to make a quick and strategic move due to geopolitical pressures. India's largest oil refiner, Indian Oil Corp, has recently made a significant purchase of crude oil from the United States and the United Arab Emirates. This decision comes amidst growing pressure from the United States and Europe to reduce reliance on Russian oil supplies. But here's where it gets controversial. How will this shift in sourcing affect India's energy security and its diplomatic relations with Russia? According to traders who preferred to remain anonymous, Indian Oil Corp has acquired at least 5 million barrels of crude oil from the U.S., in addition to 2 million barrels from Abu Dhabi. These purchases are substantial and were arranged for relatively quick delivery, which is unusual for the company's typical purchasing patterns. The urgency and scale of these acquisitions highlight the pressure India is facing to diversify its oil sources away from Russia. Earlier this week, state-owned oil processors in India were instructed to develop plans for sourcing non-Russian crude oil. This directive underscores the broader geopolitical landscape and the strategic importance of energy security in international relations. The move by Indian Oil Corp is not just a business decision, but also a response to diplomatic and economic pressures from major global powers. And this is the part most people miss: the potential long-term implications of this shift. Will India's decision to buy more oil from the US and UAE strengthen its alliances with these countries? How might this affect its relationship with Russia, a long-standing supplier? These are questions that go beyond just the immediate supply of crude oil and touch on the complex web of international politics and energy security. What do you think? Should India continue to diversify its oil sources, or is there a risk in reducing its reliance on Russian oil? Share your thoughts in the comments below. India-US tensions rise over Russian oil imports, Rubio's statement explained. India's continued reliance on Russian oil is sparking significant tension in its relationship with the United States, according to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. In a striking revelation, Rubio labeled Delhi's ties with Moscow as a persistent thorn in the India-US alliance. This statement follows U.S. President Donald Trump's recent announcement of his intention to impose a hefty 25% tariff on Indian goods, coupled with an additional unspecified penalty as a direct consequence of India's purchases of Russian oil and weaponry. During a Thursday interview with Fox News Radio, Rubio affirmed India's status as both an ally and a strategic partner to the U.S. However, he didn't mince words when he pointed out that India's substantial imports of Russian oil are creating a significant barrier in their bilateral relations with Washington. Remarkably, Russian oil constituted a staggering 35% to 40% of India's total oil imports in 2024, a dramatic surge from just 3% in 2021. As of now, India has remained silent on Rubio's remarks. Delhi has consistently justified its acquisition of Russian oil, emphasizing its necessity as a major energy importer to secure the most affordable crude oil, thereby shielding millions of impoverished Indians from escalating costs. The onset of the Ukraine war, exacerbated by Western sanctions, prompted India to significantly increase its intake of cheaper Russian crude. Rubio acknowledged these motivations, recognizing India's immense energy demands and the allure of Moscow's discounted prices. Nonetheless, he underscored that these purchases are inadvertently bolstering Russia's military endeavors in Ukraine. He elaborated, "The president's frustration is palpable. Despite the plethora of alternative oil suppliers, India persists in procuring a substantial amount from Russia, hinting at Trump's looming threat of penalties against Indian entities involved in these transactions." In a surprising turn of events, Reuters reported that major Indian state-owned refineries, including Hindustan Petroleum Corp. (HPCL), Bharat Petroleum Corp. (BPCL), Mangalore Refinery Petrochemical Limited (MRPL), and Indian Oil Corp. (IOCL), have halted imports of Russian crude over the past week due to diminishing discounts. The BBC has sought comments from these companies regarding this development. HSBC Global Investment Research also noted a substantial decline in India's oil imports from Russia in July. Contradictory, India's petroleum ministry has denied instructing state-run refiners to cease purchases of Russian crude. However, Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri hinted at adaptability, stating that India could fulfill its oil requirements from alternative sources if U.S. sanctions disrupted Russian supplies. He highlighted India's expansion of oil suppliers from 27 to approximately 40 countries. Experts at Carriage, a ratings agency, predict that any shift in India's oil import strategy away from Russia will have a minimal impact on its current account deficit. They noted, the price gap between Russian Ural and Brent crude has narrowed considerably to around $3 per barrel, down from an average of $20 per barrel in 2023. Meanwhile, Trump's critical comments about India's trade relations with Russia have ignited a strong response from Moscow. In a bold social media post, Trump dismissed the significance of their relationship, declaring, "They can drag their failing economies down together, for all I care." In a seemingly cautionary retort, Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, referenced the Cold War-era Soviet dead hand system. He provocatively suggested Trump consider the zombie-themed TV show The Walking Dead, alluding to the Soviet Union's automated nuclear strike capability. Medvedev wrote on Telegram, when discussing the dead economies of India and Russia and entering dangerous territory, perhaps he should recall his favorite movies about The Walking Dead and the potential peril of the so-called dead hand, which thankfully doesn't exist. This exchange raises a thought-provoking question. Are economic sanctions and trade disputes pushing nations towards a perilous geopolitical brink? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree or disagree with the strategies employed by these global powers? India meets U.S. tensions over Russian oil. What's really happening? India's response to U.S. criticism over Russian oil purchases, a calm but firm stance. In a measured response to the U.S. criticism over its continued purchase of Russian oil, India's Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Randhir Jaiswal, stated, "In securing our energy needs, we are guided by what is on offer in the market and the prevailing global circumstance." This calm yet firm stance comes after the U.S. ramped up pressure on India to stop buying Russian oil, arguing that it amounts to funding Vladimir Putin's war on Ukraine. The U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, acknowledged India's vast energy needs, which are expected to cross 6.6 million barrels per day by 2030. He also recognized that India is buying oil and gas from Russia due to the steep discounts offered by the sanction-hit country. However, Rubio emphasized that this is helping to sustain the Russian war effort, making it a point of irritation in the U.S.-India relationship. But here's where it gets interesting. Rubio's comments follow Trump's scathing remarks about India still buying crude and gas from Moscow. The U.S. president pointed out that Russian oil accounted for 35% of India's supply in the first half of the year and demanded that India buy from the U.S. instead. This is not the first time Trump has expressed frustration with India's energy choices. He has previously stated that India's decision to buy Russian oil is helping to fund the war effort in Ukraine. India's response to the U.S. criticism is rooted in its long-standing relationship with Russia, which it considers a close, all-weather friend. India has consistently maintained that it will not be bullied into redefining its decades-old foreign policies and current economic concerns in the past. External Affairs Minister S. J. Shankar has categorically stated that India will prioritize its citizens' needs first, which means buying oil from anyone who sells at the best possible price. This is not a new development, as India has been buying Russian oil since 2023, when Moscow began selling 1.66 million barrels per day, up from less than 700,000 in 2022. India eventually became the biggest buyer of seaborne Russian crude since the West's sanctions. However, in an effort to placate Trump, India committed to buying more oil and gas from the U.S. in February, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Trump in Washington. The sheer volume of India's energy demands means that the U.S. cannot be the sole or even a major supplier. As of today, India's largest suppliers are Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. Meanwhile, hours after slapping a 25% tariff on Indian goods, Trump announced that the US had struck a deal with Pakistan, including plans to develop its massive oil reserves. This move is seen as an attempt to put pressure on India to stop buying Russian oil and buy American instead. And this is the part most people miss. The US is not just trying to sell oil to India, it's also trying to use its economic leverage to influence India's foreign policy. The question is, will India succumb to US pressure, or will it continue to prioritize its own energy needs and maintain its relationship with Russia? The answer remains to be seen. What do you think? Should India prioritize its relationship with the US or maintain its energy ties with Russia? Share your thoughts in the comments below.